So it's honestly been an insane, I was gonna say week, but really like 4 months for Digimon Story Time Stranger news. And yes, there has been even more news this week. I would redirect you to my VOD where I reacted live to Digimon Times, the first one we got a direct style presentation for Digimon information. I'm not gonna do a big summing up video of that because honestly that VOD just acts as the summing up video for that, but I am gonna nail in on specific things from that in upcoming videos next week. However, I've been getting one comment, one tweet, one TikTok comment actually, more than any other. Why isn't Digimon Story Time Stranger on the Switch? What is up, digital companions? My name is Karn EX and welcome back to another video. And yes, I didn't accidentally film in black and white this week, but I do have this spot on my forehead, so maybe I'll film in black and white on purpose. Just kidding. And yes, Digimon Story Time Stranger news is coming thick and fast. We have brand new Digimon announced for the game, like Skull Seedramon and Sharkmon. We got confirmation that the Three Musketeers will indeed be in the game, and like I say, go check out my VOD of my reaction to Digimon Times. It's not just a reaction to Digimon Times. We dive into all the information there, a bunch of new Digimon Story Time Stranger stuff from various other sources, including this like system breakdown trailer. Admittedly the Japanese version, but there wasn't a ton of information in the English version that we didn't glean from the Japanese version, to be honest, but I might do a deep dive on that in future. And triple, quadruple, 100% confirmation that the game is releasing on PS5, Steam, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S. And yeah, I talked about it in my video a couple of weeks ago, but Digimon Story Time Stranger is locked at 30 FPS on consoles, even the PS5. This has caused some uproar in the fandom, though personally an anime-style JRPG, while 60 FPS is nice, I personally just don't care that much. All the anime I watch is in 30 FPS anyway. I almost see it as like emulating the stuff it's based on. Yeah, maybe that's cope. However, we do have something pretty interesting from comicbook.com, as they also got to talk to Ryosuke Hara recently and asked him why the 30 FPS limit was necessary. Hara said that was very important when we were developing the game. The game is very beautiful and there are many Digimon on the maps moving around. You saw Central Town earlier when there's probably hundreds of Digimon in there. Hara continued by acknowledging the request for 60 FPS in and outside of Digimon games, while saying the 30 FPS cap was ultimately chosen to create a more immersive Digimon experience. Yes, 60 FPS is obviously an important thing for a game, but we really wanted to focus on the world setting and the immersiveness of being in that world. We weighed the two, the immersiveness aspect of it and 60 versus 30 FPS, and we decided to take the more immersive Digimon experience over the frame rates. Which explains a ton. Yes, we could have the game in 60 FPS on consoles, but let's be real, the PS5 is a 5-year-old console, the Xbox Series X and S a similar kind of time frame. The PS5 Pro, well, it's a Pro version, but really it's still not exactly like excellent. It's not a gaming PC in there, you know? It's doing better, but not perfect. And this straight up is why this game is not on the Switch 1. If you followed the Switch 2 launch at all, you will have seen that even Nintendo games that kind of run like messes on the Switch 1 have had brilliant stability increases for the Switch 2. You know, all of those things you complained about in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Pokemon randomly popping in because they weren't rendered in enough time, things popping in the background, the sparseness and emptiness of environments, low poly mountains and grasslands. Yeah, that's what Digimon Story Time Stranger would look like on the Switch as well. You see all these full, vibrant environments we're seeing, from Central Town to Bacchusmon's Forest to the Abyss area, filled with Digimon life. A lot of this is being captured probably on PS5, and even that in the background, look at that Airdramon. Now imagine that running on the Switch, an 8-year-old tablet. That is not gonna look good. Now yes, this game was being developed right around when the Switch 1 first came out. However, I think they probably knew that this game was going to take a while to develop and kind of aimed for at least end-of-life PS4, if not, as the PS5 and Xbox Series X became a reality, that's hardware. It's kind of like how in film, where back in the day when they filmed in film, they were actually able to capture so much more detail, and that's why we can do transfer prints now into 4K for movies like Indiana Jones. They made these movies with a far bigger amount of detail that was then kind of like crushed down to the platforms of the day, and that's sort of what game development can be like now. You can almost make a game targeting a platform that perhaps doesn't quite exist yet. It's not always the case, of course. Sometimes it's very much that the modern console or PC is the targeted thing, but you can kind of like push things and then work out where the industry is going, especially in the transient stage between one generation and the next. Which I'm sure you're now asking the second question. Karn, why isn't the game on Switch 2 at launch? Honestly, because the Switch 2 like just came out. This game, as I say, has been in development, or at least pre-production, since around 2017. There's been a lot of issues along the way. Habu left the development, Ryosuke Hara kind of took over and became the main guy, and honestly, Hara, I just want to thank you very much. But something which maybe you're not aware of is that Nintendo Switch 2 dev kits were really hard to get hold of if you weren't Nintendo first party, or even a Nintendo third party company. We have some articles from My Nintendo News, Nintendo seemingly prioritizing Switch 2 indie dev kits for games that wouldn't be doable on Switch 1, trying to up their amount of like indie darling games available on the Switch 2. From The Gamer, an article that says major developer reveals exactly how long they've had Switch 2 development units, with Hello Games having Switch 2 dev kits a year before the release of the Switch 2. However, a lot of developers did not get their hands on Switch 2 dev kits, and I would suspect big companies with many different dev teams were likely only allocated a couple of dev kits, or maybe more than a couple, but you get my point. Because if we look at the list of Nintendo Switch 2 games currently announced, there are only 6 games tied to Bandai Namco Entertainment. The first of which, Elden Ring Tarnished Edition, we have to remember, is primarily developed by From Software and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment. And also, it's Elden Ring, one of the most lauded video games of all time. Of course, they're gonna get a Switch 2 dev kit. Bear in mind that the Duskbloods, being developed also by From Software, the This Definitely Isn't Bloodborne game, isn't even seemingly published by Bandai Namco. This is a specifically From Software Nintendo deal. So yeah, if they're doing a exclusive Nintendo game, probably super easy to get a dev kit. Next up is Kirby Air Riders, which comes from Bandai Namco Studios and Sora Limited, and is not published by Bandai Namco, it's published solely by Nintendo. This is another Bandai Namco game for Switch 2, which actually is a Sora game that Bandai Namco is helping on. Sakurai likes to rope in Bandai Namco Studios for things like Smash, any game that he's working on, so this also really isn't a Bandai Namco game. Next we have Little Nightmares Enhanced Edition and Little Nightmares 3, and this actually has a pretty big fandom, Little Nightmares. And again, while published by Bandai Namco, Engine Software is making the Enhanced Edition, and Little Nightmares 3 is developed by Supermassive Games, which, well, their name actually is kind of unironic because they are pretty supermassive in the industry. So again, it makes sense that Supermassive specifically, responsible for games like Little Nightmares 3, Until Dawn, the Dark Pictures Anthology, and much, much more, would get a Switch 2 dev kit. The only legitimately, like, fully Bandai Namco in-house, outhouse Switch 2 game is Shadow Labyrinth. And that is interesting because Shadow Labyrinth is getting a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, aka you can buy it as it is, or you can upgrade the base Switch version. First of all, it's a Pac-Man game. Like, that's naturally going to attract the attention of Nintendo. Pac-Man's one of the biggest mascots in video game history. Also, you know, he was in Smash. Second of all, I actually got to play Shadow Labyrinth on the Switch 2 at Summer Game Fest, and I can say firsthand, Nintendo is very, very guarded with the Switch 2. Now, Summer Game Fest was happening just after the launch of the Switch 2, so retail units were out there. The entire time I was playing Shadow Labyrinth with my Bandai Namco rep, there was just someone from Nintendo sitting there watching, making sure that I wasn't shoving the Joy-Con where I shouldn't shove it or something, I guess. Nintendo are incredibly guarded of this system. Even when someone makes a game for them and they're showing it off at Summer Game Fest, they needed a specific Nintendo rep to sit in and make sure that nothing was going weird with the Nintendo product. Gives you an idea of what's going on. And the final game from Bandai Namco, probably closest to Digimon, is Tamagotchi Plaza, which is also getting a Switch 2 edition, upgraded from the base Switch version. Honestly, I have less logic for this one, other than I feel like Hyde, the developers of this, got lucky in the coin flip and Hara maybe cared a little bit less about making a Switch 2 version in the Switch 2 and Time Stranger launch window. Plus, as much as we might not like to admit it, Tamagotchi is absolutely still the more popular franchise out of the two, gets a lot more video games, the releases of the new Tamagotchi V-Pets tend to do better than the Digimon ones, or at least seem to be more publicly acknowledged than the Digimon ones, so I guess it makes sense why Tamagotchi Plaza getting a Switch 2 edition would be a priority for a dev kit. And that's really it as far as Bandai Namco video games go for the Switch 2 right now. And like I say, a lot of them are just like published by Bandai Namco or helped by Bandai Namco. They're not straight up Bandai Namco games. I think it's also notable that a good chunk of Bandai Namco games for Switch 2 are Switch 2 editions of games that are going to be on the base Switch, with only really Little Nightmares 3 and the Nintendo published Sora co-developed Sakurai-led Kirby Air Riders as outliers. By the way, as an aside, Bandai Namco and Nintendo have a very good relationship. There is zero danger of a Pal World-esque lawsuit here. But Digimon Story Time Stranger was never developed with the Nintendo Switch 1 in mind, so it's not going to get a Nintendo Switch 2 edition because there's no Nintendo Switch 1 game to release. It's just incredibly unlikely that Mediavision would be one of the teams to get the very limited Switch 2 dev kits. And even if they did, if we're looking at something like No Man's Sky, which got a Switch Switch 2 dev kit a year ago, do we really think a year is enough time to completely port over the primarily PS5 and Xbox Series X game to Switch 2? Probably not. The reality could be that they have been working on a Switch 2 port this entire time. However, if they were to make a Switch 2 version have to come out at the same time as the PS5, Xbox, and Steam version, that's going to mean a delay. This game has already been in some form of production since 2017, the best part of a decade. Would you want a Switch 2 version to make it last even longer? To wait until 2026 to play the game? Probably not. But unlike MediaVision, you could get your hands at least on a copy of Digimon Story Time Stranger thanks to today's sponsor, ZeninTCG. You know ZeninTCG by now. They are your one-stop shop for Digimon and anime goods. They have been incredibly supportive of the channel. Specifically when I was going over to Summer Game Fest, Zenin did me an absolute solid, so I really do appreciate them and I appreciate if you check them out. And they're inviting you to celebrate Digimon with them here at Zenin. To celebrate Digimon's 28th anniversary, which was on June 26th. They're gonna have 100 plus new licensed exclusive Digimon merch in their store. 100 plus, from keychains to acrylic stands to minifigures to stickers and many more. Most of them are exclusive from the Digimon pop-up stores in Asia, and they will be running limited sales and bundles till the end of July. And as I touched on, they will be having a giveaway. For anyone that purchases more than 50 USD, including shipping of goods from ZeninTCG, you will be entitled to join their Digimon Story Time Stranger giveaway. They've got 8 copies of the game to be given away for PS5, Xbox, and Steam. So if you go and check out something on Zenin, go and get a pre-order, or something that's already out from their collection, spend $50 with them, you get entered for a chance to win the game anyway. So you're getting Digimon goods that you want, and you might get a free game out of it. Win-win. In their Digimon Celebration group, there is a bunch of stuff to pick up, like the pop-up store exclusive Digimon Adventure wooden doll keychains, these cool little bean plushes, Digivice stickers, Adventure 02 coin medallions, which look really cool, very old excavated archaeology vibes, and much, much more. Also, if you are looking for the brand new announced Pendulum Colors and Iamon cases, stay tuned next week for a video where I'm going to do a big deep dive into everything we learned specifically on that, and where you can get the pre-orders with Zenin. But yes, do go check out Zenin's Digimon Celebration collection, make an order of 50 USD or more, and you might win a copy of Digimon Story Time Stranger. So thank you to ZeninTCG for sponsoring this video. And yeah, that's basically where the crux lies for me on Digimon Story Time Stranger. While yes, it would be nice for the game to be on Switch, they've simply made it too good. Now, the question lies, is there going to be a Switch 2 release at some point in the future? Yes. The Switch 2 absolutely can handle Digimon Story Time Stranger. Now, you might think it can't because it's a little portable or whatever, but think about the games that are coming out on this thing. Cyberpunk 2077 is a launch title for the Switch 2. It runs pretty great, comparable with the PS5 version. Instead of a cloud version, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is going to be on the Switch 2. It's also very likely that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the unnamed remake Part 3, I'm so annoyed that they stole the reunion name for Crisis Core, will also all be on the Switch 2. I've seen people say there's no way they'll even run on the Switch 2, but do you truly think Cyberpunk 2077 and Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade can run on the Switch 2, but Time Stranger can't? Listen, it's a good looking game, guys, but it doesn't look that good. Chill. Street Fighter 6 is running on the Switch 2. Star Wars Outlaws, Split Fiction. While yes, they're going to be different and running in different ways to their PS5 and Steam counterparts, I can almost guarantee you that eventually Time Stranger will make its way to the platform. It took a little while for World Next Order and Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory, but we got there in the end. They came to Switch 1. And yes, it may be small comfort that the brand new Digimon game is not coming to Switch 2 at launch, and when it does come to Switch 2, it might be in a little while. And yes, you'll have to buy the brand new expensive Switch 2 to get it. It's a portable option that I think likely will come. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. Hara and everyone at Digimon Games is clearly making an effort to bring these games to platforms that didn't have them before. There's been a bigger upswing towards Xbox releases for Digimon games. Steam and PC seems to be a big priority, and given that the port to Switch of World Next Order was in very recent memory, I don't think you have to worry about at least bare minimum Digimon games not releasing on Nintendo platforms in future. Just give them some time to cook. Plus, I think it also helps Digimon Story Time Stranger feel separate from Pokemon Legends ZA. The comparison to Pokemon is tiring and honestly really boring when it's used negatively. Obviously, I think it's important to acknowledge that they're both popular monster-raising franchises, but I think this game not launching on Switch will set it apart. I think it being a PS5, Xbox, and Steam game will just help make it feel different, like the more SMT-style RPG it is. And with that October 3rd release date being a couple of weeks before ZA, maybe people who don't own a Switch or a Switch 2 will be looking for a new monster-raising franchise to check out. I think it actually might help the sales of Digimon Story Time Stranger, not hinder it. The game looks fantastic, is getting a ton of buzz, does and isn't on Nintendo platforms. So people that don't own Nintendo stuff and do own PCs, it might be the winner for them. In the meantime, I think something I would really love to see clarification on is how this game's going to run on the Steam Deck. I don't think it's going to run great on the Steam Deck, but I'm hoping as a Steam Deck enjoyer, I promise I don't just use it to emulate Nintendo games. It would be phenomenal to be able to play Time Stranger on my PC and then, you know, take my Steam Deck with me and go play it on the train or just like in the car or in bed. Maybe. So as far as portable Digimon Story Time Stranger goes, this might be your best hope going forward. Hopefully. Maybe not. Alright, that is it. Why Digimon Story Time Stranger is never going to be on the Switch 1 and may not be on the Switch 2 for a little while yet. Thank you to my sovereign ZDK14. Here is all the good luck, buddy. I know you need it right now. Gee whiz. As well as everyone else who supports me over on patreon.com/Karn EX and my channel members here on YouTube. I appreciate you all so much too. There'll be a video either Wednesday or Sunday next week going over to me what is the most random and perhaps interesting thing that we got at Digimon Times the other day. Shambhala, the brand new Digimon world. But until then, I'll see you next time when we go digital. Bye bye.